Now, there is an opportunity for questions. I do stress questions to the Chief Minister on his statement. Honourable Member for Ramsey, Mr Hooper.
Thank you very much, Mr President. I'd like to firstly thank the Chief Minister for that statement. Following his comments last week, I was looking forward to an exhaustive macro-analysis of the 585-page document, so I'm really glad that didn't happen. Although having said that, some of the comments in here do have me a little bit worried. He's just said that the relationship we'll have under this proposed agreement will be the same or very similar to the relationship we currently have under Protocol 3. I wonder if he could set out what the differences will be, or if they are quite long and complex, if he could circulate something or publish a very clear document that the public can understand that sets out what those very similar but different aspects are going to be.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. I suppose the answer is we don't know, Mr President. I put that statement in and I knew I would get a question on this, to the extent that this is a draft agreement, Mr President. That's why we are still working exhaustively with the United Kingdom to get further clarification on what they understand. So it really is too early to say, but we are working on this area, and when we have an answer, I will of course write to honourable members, and I'm afraid that will be a reply you will hear time and time again, because as I've said in my speech, honourable members, this is a draft.
Honourable Member for Onken, Miss Edge.
Thank you, Mr President. Just wonder if the Chief Minister could just clarify with regards to the couple of paragraphs about exit day and the implementation period, that they would be allowed to remain and to accrue the right to permanent residency once they had been there for 5 years. What date would the residency be taken from, and what impact would that have on other policies on the island? So, for instance, what I'm asking is, if I accrued 5 years on the date of exit, or can I accrue 10 years? I just need a bit of clarification on that and what impact that would have on, say, housing policy.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank the honourable member for her question. The 5-year period, Mr President, is up until including any extension period. So when the UK finally leaves the European Union, and that could well be on the 29th of March 2019 when a no-deal scenario happens. It could well be on the 31st of December 2020 that if you're resident in the United Kingdom or the Crown dependencies up until that date, then the 5-year period will start. If you only move in the day before, you will then have a 5-year period to apply for. And as I've also mentioned, there is an option which would have to be agreed by the UK and the European Union to extend the implementation period, and there is talk of months, 1 year, up to 2 years. So that is to be agreed going forward, but it will be from the last day that the UK was a member of the European Union, including the implementation period.
Honourable Member Mr Hooper.
Thank you, Mr President. I have a number of questions, but I'll try and deal with them one at a time. I'm actually quite worried at the Chief Minister's statement there that we don't know what this means for the Isle of Man. This agreement was published 6 days ago, and it's quite concerning that we don't yet know what it means. We've got a very long and helpful statement that he's just presented, but it sets out possibilities then. It doesn't set out actually this is what it means for us, so that the extent that we're limiting this, or the agreement limits the implementation period and all the rest of these arrangements to the extent of Protocol 3, that's quite worrying in and of itself if we don't know what that actually means for us in real terms. So a few of the statements in here, for example, the issue that Miss Edge has just raised about the reciprocal rights, the statement is quite clear that UK citizens who are resident in the EU on or before exit day will have the same rights. What about those islanders with Manxman status who don't have the same rights to live and work in EU countries as UK citizens? How are they going to be impacted by this agreement? Are they covered at all by some of these reciprocal agreements, by this withdrawal agreement? I think we need some clarity on that from the Chief Minister.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. And I hope the honourable member isn't intentionally trying to misplace my words, but we are as clear as we can be on this, but as I've said before, this is only a draft agreement, and therefore nothing, as it keeps on getting said, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. That's the point I'm trying to make. So we believe this is what they hope to have happen, but it will depend on whether and when an agreement can be reached between the European Union. Now, he raised the rights of British citizens living in the EU and will it be preserved? Does that include Manxmen? And the EU law defines a Manxman as someone who gains their British nationality through their connection with the Isle of Man and who at the same time cannot show a similar connection with the UK. This means people who are born, naturalised or registered in the Isle of Man, but who have either a parent or a grandparent born, naturalised or registered in the UK, or have not been ordinarily resident in the UK for 5 years, and they are defined as a Manxman. These people do not have the right to benefit from EU provisions relating to free movement of persons or services. The Isle of Man government has been working closely with the United Government on citizens' rights to preserve the rights of those currently resident in the EU 27, including those who hold Manxman status. The immigration status and access to public services of Manxmen residing in the EU depends on national law rather than EU law, and so should not change after exit.
Honourable Member for Onken, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr President. I also just want to thank the Chief Minister for making his statement this morning. I was wondering if it's possible he could just give a little bit more information on the common travel arrangements, especially for Isle of Man residents looking to travel to the UK, to Ireland, to Europe and beyond after the 29th of March 2019. Thank you.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. I can comment on the common travel area, and the draft withdrawal agreement makes provision to ensure that the common travel area can continue to function. This means that passports will not be checked for travel between the United Kingdom, Ireland and the Crown dependencies. But regarding further afield in the other EU countries, Mr President, I cannot at this moment give any detailed answer to the Honourable Member for Onken because that detail has not yet been agreed.
Honourable Member Mr Hooper.
Thank you very much, Mr President. The Chief Minister mentioned about the future relationship statement and the fact that it doesn't contain any mention of territorial scope, so we don't know whether or not we're included in that. And I appreciate that his team are over there working with the UK right now on that issue, but does he have any idea when we'll get some clarity on whether or not the Isle of Man is included in some way, in some shape or form with that future relationship agreement, and really what that may or may not look like? Does he have any picture at all at this stage? The second question I've got with him is, according to a recent Gibraltar news article, the UK spokesman has stated that the Crown dependencies will not be excluded from negotiations on the future relationship. And that seems to directly contradict the Chief Minister's recent assertion that we're not allowed to participate directly in any negotiations. And I wonder if he has comment on that as well.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. If I can answer them in reverse, I think there's been a slight misinterpretation on what Gibraltar said. There's no way Gibraltar will be allowed to sit around the table at the negotiations. What will happen is Gibraltar will be in exactly the same position as ourselves, the Channel Islands, the European Union countries, where we will go to the Department for Exiting the European Union, putting over our concerns so that their representatives will take on board the issues and the problems that we have and Gibraltar have. Moving on to the territorial scope, as I said, Mr President, the Honourable Member is quite right, there was no mention of it, and that is why we have asked our officers to go away to Westminster to get the clarification that I'm sure he and the rest of the Honourable Members of Tynwald will want, and I'll be more than happy that when we have that answer, I will write to all Honourable Members giving them that update.
Honourable Member Mrs Beecroft.
Thank you, Mr President. Given the lack of clarity on several areas, could the Chief Minister consider seeking expert legal advice as to whether the EU DWA as currently drafted provides sufficient assurance of the continuation of the Isle of Man's relationship with the EU via Protocol 3 during the Brexit transition period? I'm thinking of somebody along the lines of Professor Catherine Barnard of Cambridge University. She's a professor in European Union law and an expert in this matter. Would you consider seeking advice from somebody such as that?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to clarify the points. So I'm just have to have a quick sip. That during the transition period, the Isle of Man will comply with the rules and regulations, effectively as if we still had Protocol 3. That's why we have the new agreement. So, if the UK doesn't leave on the 29th of March at 11 o'clock, and there's a transition period, then we will follow the rules that the United Kingdom follow.
Honourable Member Mr Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the amount of time and effort and energy that the government and his team and the Chief Minister and his team have put into negotiations with the UK surrounding Brexit and the withdrawal agreement, is he disappointed, as I am disappointed, at the lack of clarity that there is inside the agreement itself, and also the lack of clarity that's been provided to the Isle of Man government in respect of our relationship with this agreement and with the future relationship statement?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not disappointed. I think the UK government have shared with us an awful lot of information. This is a significant event in history, in world history, let alone Isle of Man history, and I am very grateful for the availability of being able to send a team, whether it be a political team or a officer team, to Westminster to get the latest up-to-date thinking. And I also have to thank the Under-Secretary of State, Mr Robin Walker, for ringing me on the day that the deal was announced to give me an update on that. Obviously, it's an incredibly large piece of policy, and whilst we all love our island and it is the centre of our universe, we have to accept that it is not the centre of everyone else's universe.
Honourable Member Miss Edge.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wondering if the Chief Minister could give some assurance with regards to anything that's coming currently through the EU, like the CCTB and the Common Consolidated Tax Base, and what impact assessments we've done on the island with regards to that.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. I haven't got that detailed information, but I'm more than happy to share it with honourable members in writing.